the most difficult part of this is looking out to an audience that's non-existent, at least in front of me. So anyway, I'm thankful to be here. My thanks to Drake Arts for inviting me to do this, and to the folks at the Criterion Theater here in Bar Harbor for allowing me to use their incredibly beautiful facility. Probably you're already aware, my name is Henries, and I've been a flute maker and a flute player for the last 30 years of my life. And so I have a few songs to share with you. This first song that I'll play for you is one called Thanksgiving. It's a song that makes the effort to acknowledge and express my gratitude for life and for the things that enable my living, our living, and a few things that we oftentimes don't consider or are easily overlooked. Things like being able to see, being able to hear and smell and taste and move and feel. And one short story, my work before this was with children in long-term treatment, children with pervasive developmental disabilities and autism. And one young girl on the unit that I worked on, one day rested her arm on a hot electric stove. Her brain didn't process the fact that her arm was, in peril. It was burning. And it really brought to mind this gift of being able to feel, when snow or rain or someone touches us gently. It's easily overlooked. So this song is just about being grateful for these gifts that we have continually. Thanksgiving. This morning here on the coast of Maine where we live, it's pretty chilly, maybe about 20 degrees. Last night I was expecting and hoping for 6 or 10 or 20 inches of snow. I was a little disappointed. I think there's nothing more beautiful than watching or feeling or listening to snow as it's falling. Of course, that's just one of my favorite things about this place that we live, where we live, this earth. It's filled with so much beauty that words fail, for me anyway, to express how it is that it makes me feel. I have a song that makes the effort. It's a short song that's called A Song for the Earth, and it's simply about my love for this earth, this place, our home. I mentioned I've been playing and building flutes for 30 years. It's the first musical instrument I've ever had any success playing. Maybe I've had success playing it, I don't know, but I know I love doing it. I started late in my life. I'm 35 now, so I started when I was 5. One thing that comes to mind when I think about my own experience and journey with this instrument is that I realize it's never really too late in our lives to try something new, something that maybe we've longed to do all of our lives, or maybe in some way or another we felt incapable of having success at. I'm learning that if I approach something that that interests me with enthusiasm and with just a desire to experience, then there really can't be any wrong in that journey. And I think it's important that we explore other aspects of dormant aspects, or maybe parts of ourselves that we've neglected. Before I started playing the flute, I listened to a lot of flute music, and one person whose music really inspired me a lot, his name was John Raynor. John Raynor was from Taos Pueblo. John grew up in a family who sang ceremonial songs, prayer songs for their community. And John, at some point in his life, felt inadequate in that regard. He felt his voice wasn't, suitable for singing. So John began to learn about the flute and approached his flute music like his family approached their ceremonial, their prayer songs. As John grew older, he went on to teach at Brigham Young University, and some of his music reflects the joining of the sacred music from his home at Taos Pueblo and the sacred music of his religion. And I find it to be incredibly beautiful. John and I became friends maybe the last 4 years or so of his life. He passed away some years back, but I do remain friends with his family. I'd like to play a song from Taos Pueblo in memory of John and our relationship, and as a reminder, for us to explore and experience things that maybe we've neglected to do in our lives. A song from Taos Pueblo. This next song that I'd like to play is one called Earth and Sky. And Earth and Sky came about as I observed in our broad communities how it is historically and in some contemporary times, how it is that we have treated women in our daily lives, if you will. The list is very long in terms of the inequalities that we can see in terms of how women have been seen as part of our community. At some point in my own life, I was thinking about the balance of feminine and masculine energy that lives within me. Without my mom, I wouldn't exist. I couldn't exist. And without my dad, I couldn't exist. Initially, this song was basically to help me to remember to honor the feminine. But then it felt lopsided, it felt imbalanced. And the conclusion that I reached was that it was because I had left out the masculine side. And so when we look at creation, we see this dual energy in everything that exists. And in our stories, Earth is feminine, Mother Earth, and sky is masculine, Father Sky. And in the place where we see life in all of the forms that we recognize, it's where earth and sky meet, where they join. So it feels vitally important for our children and their children that we acknowledge this duality and honor and respect this feminine and masculine energy. This song is just to help me to remember that, Earth and Sky. I'm just looking at all of you who are applauding. Of course, I'm joking because, again, in front of me, there's no one sitting. Over the last 15 or so years, there's been quite a renaissance, if you will, of the native flute. Some of you may know the instrument as Native American flute, or as the love flute, or as the courting flute. I tend to stay away from those terms and just call it the native flute for numerous reasons, of which I won't get into right now. This instrument was all but forgotten about. 30 years ago, when I began making flutes, there were only a handful of us actually doing that, at least in the public's eye. And nowadays, you can find flute makers and flute players and sellers of flutes and people giving workshops and lessons, both online and in person, all over the world, everywhere on the globe for the most part. And I love the fact that there's so much interest in this instrument now. One concerning part is that with this enthusiasm that there is, there are times where it feels like the old way of the flute is being left aside. It's being forgotten about. Maybe it's not being considered. The cultural aspects of this instrument go beyond the musicality of it. And often in today's world, it becomes, or it has become, just a musical instrument. For me, it's a tool, it's a method of articulating what it is that I feel, how I see the world, how I live in the world. It's a tool for prayer. And in many of our cultures, the flute was used in that way, for ceremony. One of those ceremonies included relationship between women and men. One of the flute players who I loved listening to, even before I began playing flute, was a person who's Comanche Kiowa, whose name was Tommy Ware. And on one of his recordings, there's a courting song, a love song, if you will. And I'd like to make the effort to play that, both as a way of remembering some of the older ways of the flute, and a way to remember Tommy Ware's contributions to this important instrument. So, a Kiowa Comanche courting song. Some years ago, I was invited back to a museum to make some noise for anyone who happened to wander by. And as I was setting up, the curator of the museum, she approached me, and she said, "Hey, Hawk, after your last visit, someone came and left a gift for you." And the note with the gift said that the person who was giving it was unsure of its importance, and that I was welcome to just discard it if I felt the need to. That gift is the flute that I'm holding. When I first looked at it, immediately I knew how important it was. This flute is, roughly 200 years old, give or take a few years, and a very old example of the voicing of the flutes, 100, 200 years ago. In today's world, flutes have become, in terms of their music, their voices, a little bit more refined to reflect the styles of music that people play on it today. This flute that I'm holding is a bit more raspy, a bit more breathy. The tuning was quite a bit different than most of the flutes that I have, most of the flutes that I play. And I love the idea that that some peoples before me had this flute and put their music, put their songs into it, held onto it until it was passed on to whomever it was that needed to have it next. When the flute first came to me, it was unplayable as it had been crushed. And when I consulted with friends who were conservators of musical instruments at various museums, they all said, "Hawk, you should just not do anything with that flute and put it in a museum so that people can see it." And immediately I thought, what good is a beautiful cake under glass if you can't eat it? So I thought, no, I actually needed to make this flute work again so that I can play it and people can listen to it, people can handle it, and in my opinion, that's what would keep this flute living. So I did. I fixed it as best I could, and I'd like to just make a few notes on it so that you can hear this very old flute. When I was very young, maybe about 13 or so years old, my friends and I were oftentimes sitting in front of a television for a little while, watching something fun. At that time, the news was filled with reports of riots that were happening. This was during the height of the civil rights movement, riots that were happening in various cities across the country. We would watch, a little bit of the news and then maybe go out and play some basketball or go fishing or do something like that. One day at school, there was a big commotion, and a number of our friends went running by us, And one of them stopped to warn us, saying that we should run because there were kids from a neighboring city's school beating up people who looked like us. I'm not sure those were quite his words, but that was the gist of what he was saying. So in fact, we took his advice and we ran. One of our friends, there were four of us, one of us, though, wasn't as quick as the others, and he actually was caught by this group of marauding kids and was beat up pretty badly. This enraged us. This filled us with tremendous amounts of anger. And walking around in our community, it was in the suburbs in Rhode Island, walking around in our community one evening, unsure of what it was that we wanted to do. Didn't feel like shooting hoop, didn't feel like whatever other things we would normally be doing. And one of us came upon this bright idea of beating up the first white person that we saw. And our rage began to leak as we thought more about this idea. And the more the rage leaked, the more this idea became a fire that glowed brightly in us. And so we walked around in our community hoping to encounter some person with lighter skin than ours. And sure enough, a short while later, this kid, he walked around the corner. We saw the color of his skin, and we looked at each other and gave each other the nod, the signal that this would be our victim. And we jumped on this boy who was our age, and we beat him to a pulp. There were four of us. We hurt him pretty badly. And as our rage exited our bodies, we looked closer beyond this person's skin color and realized that, in fact, this was a friend of ours. And as we were in shock, realizing this, and we stepped back, and a couple of us began to weep. And at that point in my life, I thought, I will never look at a person's skin color and let that influence how it is that I treat them. My desire for my children is that they'll be treated by how it is that they live, how it is that they are in the world, and not because of the color of their skin. And all too often, our political affiliations, our religious affiliations, our ideologies, oftentimes create these massive divisions between peoples and wars, whether they're the wars between individuals or between nations or between cultures. They're oftentimes extremely hurtful. And this song that I'd like to play for you, it's called Old Song. And for me, it's a reminder that if we allow ourselves to look at each other closely, look at our histories, and even look at the foundations of some of the religions that oftentimes are oppositional to each other, but if we look closely, we'll find the common threads that weave themselves through all of these things that are oftentimes divisive. And if we can rather look at the similarities as opposed to the differences, then I believe we can create a healthier world for our children and their children's children. That's what this song is about. Old Song. This next piece that I'd like to play is one that's about connecting with, if you will, the old knowledge, the old information that exists in our world, all around us. Maybe related to the last song that I played, I'm really of the thinking that a healthy way to live, information about, well, let me say that different. Within the tree, within the whale, within the stone and the mountain and the rivers, there's an energy that lives that suggests a natural way of being in relationship to each other, and in being in that type of relationship, health and a healthful environment is created, and I'm stammering here, but a healthy way for our children to live is in front of us. And I'd like to play this song as a way for me, again, to remember, to remind myself when I'm forgetting it, how it is to move in the world, to live in the world, that to stand with my back against a big old tree, or to sit by a river and listen, or to hear the songs of the whales, within that is a way to live. Yeah. Old knowledge. glad we're not live, because this part can be cut out. Me looking at you. One more? 5 minutes till 50. 5 minutes till 50? They're like ice, that the voice isn't working good.
It sounds beautiful.
Does it sound okay?
It's coming through nicely.
Is it? Okay, good. They're raspy.
Yeah. I ran the heat up all the way to 62 for you.
Oh my God! 5 minutes till the end?
5 minutes till 50.
Oh, till 50, okay, so 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Ish, yeah. Just got to remember what song I wanted to play next. 'Remember, so I'll play this one. So I have time for one more short little song. This song really stems from my childhood, and though some of you may find this hard to believe, when I was very young, I would do things that would get me in trouble. And, there was a point where the consequences that would be given to me were probably the most painful things ever that a human being could ever experience. Because probably the most effective consequence was that I would be grounded. I would be told I couldn't leave the yard, and my friends couldn't come in and play with me, so that meant I had to sulk around in our yard by myself. We were fortunate that we had a variety of apple trees and pear trees and a few different types of grapes. All of these trees and grapevines were fairly old, pretty well established, and so oftentimes when I would get grounded, which happened probably more than I want to admit, I would go and sit in, these trees or underneath the grapevines and maybe eat grapes, green grapes or green apples until I had a stomach ache, which was another consequence. Initially, when this first started happening, the birds in the trees would fly away. But I ended up in these trees enough that the birds, they just became familiar and comfortable with my being there. And I would sit and began to watch them, listen to their songs, watch their behavior. And it was at that time in my life, I may have been around 10, where I absolutely fell in love with birds. And so I made this little song as a way of just expressing how much I love these birds who live with us and the beauty that they bring to this earth. Song for the Birds. Again, my thanks to Drake at Arts for inviting me to present my flutes, to all of you who are listening, and to Chuck and Taylor here at the Criterion Theater for opening up their space and providing everything that was needed for this video to be made. Thank you so much.